First function, awareness raising, including by means of thematic reports. There is an inertia in the operation of the systems. The IACHR acknowledges that the only operation of the systems that mainly focus on responding to violations of right once they have occurred. Respective legislations recognize the obligation of the state to take all appropriate measures to prevent violations of the rights of children and adolescents. And they should design public policies, programs, and services and allocate the necessary resources to ensure the effective exercise, enjoyment, and observance of all rights for all children and adolescents, and to prevent violations. The IACHR has found the policies and programs earmarked for primary prevention or for addressing the structural causes behind the violations of rights continue to need greater attention and resources. The Convention on the Rights of the Child has been fundamental for recognizing the rights and for the state to articulate all those measures that are required in order to respect, protect, and safeguard their rights. Better information systems, qualitative and quantitative data, and communication strategies are all needed to show evidence of and explain the issue. Helps to promote social rejection of the various forms of violence and other violations of the rights of children and adolescents, and increase the chances of these violations being reported and not remaining in impunity.
The Inter-American Commission on Human Rights carries out visits to countries to analyze the general situation or to investigate a specific situation in certain human rights themes. In the visit the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights did to Mexico in October 2014, the Rapporteurship on the Rights of Children received information that indicated an alarming increase in the number of children who had not been found. According to the information from the National Registry of Disappeared or Missing Persons, in Mexico there are more than 7,016 children and adolescents between the age of 0 and 17 who are disappeared, which represents 30% of the total number of disappearances. For example, in the same year, there was a disappearance of 400 children and adolescents in Mexico State, although the Subdeputy de la PGJ confirms the statistics of missing children, no response has been obtained. Another shortcoming observed is that when adults recruit children for organized crime, this is not classified as crime in the criminal code. Furthermore, there are no effective prevention and protection policies for children in the most vulnerable situations. Girls are also more heavily affected by disappearances, as evidenced by the fact that they account for approximately 2/3 of the total number of missing children. The state must adopt specific measures to prevent this more frequent violation of girls' rights.
Recommendations are measures recommended to the OAS member states that they should take the better to protect human rights in the countries of the hemisphere. For example, regarding children and adolescents, the IACHR urges the Mexican states to develop operational protocols for the police regarding interventions involving children and adolescents, aimed at ensuring the protection of their rights. Implement and strengthen measures to fulfill the duty to act with due diligence to prevent, punish, and eradicate violence against children and adolescents, including concrete efforts to fulfill the obligations to prevent, investigate, punish, and repair human rights violations, and consider the corresponding aggravating factors relating to the age of the victim.
Considering petitions by individuals and NGOs. In 2014, 1,758 petitions, majority relating to Mexico, Colombia, Peru, and Argentina, were submitted. Any person, group of persons, or an organization can submit a petition. The petition is free of charge and does not require a representation of a lawyer. For the Commission to be able to examine a petition, one must have exhausted domestic judicial remedies in keeping with the legislation in force in the state in question. This means that before presenting the petition to the Commission, domestic courts must look at it first and decide on the situation. If this process is not possible, you explicitly have to explain why. Domestic judicial remedies have to be adequate and effective. This means habeas corpus and obtaining results. The Commission might examine a petition in which domestic remedies have not been exhausted when, for example, domestic laws do not provide due process to protect the rights allegedly violated. The alleged victim has not been allowed process to domestic remedies or has been kept from exhausting them, or there is a delay in the issuance of a null decision on the case with no valid reason. The petition has to be submitted after 6 months for the final judicial decision. The Commission will send the number assigned to the petition when received. The petition will go under study by the Commission, and after a decision will be taken, whether it's to open the petition for processing or not to process, or to request additional information. The rules under which the Commission can adopt precautionary measures can be found under Article 25. Further information about petitions can be found in the Petition and Case System Informational Brochure. For example, Silvia Elena Rivera Morales, ETAL, submitted a petition to the IACHR about girls and young women who disappeared and were murdered in Ciudad Juárez in Mexico.
An example of an IACHR jurisprudence in the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights is the application to the Inter-American Court on Human Rights in the case of Leopoldo López Mendoza against Venezuela. The Inter-American Commission presents before the Inter-American Court for Human Rights an application in case 12.668 Leopoldo López Mendoza against the state of Venezuela for its international responsibility in disqualifying Mr. López Mendoza from holding public office through an administrative action in breach of the Convention's standards, in prohibiting his participation in the 2008 regional elections, in failing to ensure his right to a fair trial and judicial protection, and in failing to provide appropriate redress. The Commission requests that the court adjudge the international obligation of Venezuela for failing to comply with its international obligations by its violations of Articles 23, 8.1, and 25 of the American Convention on Human Rights. The present case has been processed in accordance with the American Convention and is submitted to the court pursuant to Article 34 of the Rules of Procedure of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. Affixed to this application as an appendix is a copy of the report on the merits number 92, prepared pursuant to Article 50 of the Convention. The referral of the case to the court addresses the requirement for justice and redress in the connection with Mr. López, administrative disqualification from holding political office in breach of international standards. The Commission believes it is important to note that since restricting electoral and political rights is an extremely serious matter, such restrictions must be subjected to close scrutiny. The Commission also notes the importance of the transparent exercise of public functions in strengthening democracy and the informed participation of individuals in its construction.
González versus Mexico. This case stems from the assassination of 3 women, Claudivette González, Esmeralda Herrera Monreal, Laura Berenice Ramos Monares, and family, in 3 separate incidents who were all found dead in the same cotton field in Ciudad Juárez. Besides finding violations of several articles of the American Convention, such as Articles 1, 11, 19, 2, 25, 4, 5, and 8, this was mainly due to the severe investigative deficiencies that marked prosecution of the women's assassins. The court also found violations of the Convention of the Prevention, Punishment, and Eradication of Violence Against Women, also known as Convention of Belém do Pará, 1994. The judgment is a landmark case on violence against women. Finally, the court ruled in favor of the plaintiffs and demanded economic compensations from the State of Mexico to the families of the victims. However, they have not fulfilled these conditions.